This time of year, we hear Joy to the World being played at every turn. And we have joy up in lights on city streets. And we get joyful greetings arriving with advertisements in the mail. It's an in-your-face kind of joy, almost a command. Be joyful or else. As if joy is just something you're supposed to have in your back pocket to whip out like a credit card at the holidays. As if joy can be bought and sold and passed around like a trinket. I don't know about you, but I don't find it that easy this year. This year, I'm feeling a little cynical about that cheap kind of joy. Where can we find a deeper and sustaining joy? I love the examples that all of you have given already in this service this morning, and I want to give thanks to Ash for her song, to Cora, and to Julian and Miles, and to Crystal for their reflections. And I want to bring us also to the old story of the Advent season, which I lately have been calling the gestation season. The old story in the first chapter of the Gospel of Luke. It's the short account of Mary going to visit Elizabeth when they're both pregnant. And I think it tells us something important about joy in this season. Because both Mary and Elizabeth were dangerously pregnant. They were living in the margins of an unfriendly empire. Elizabeth had lived her life in disgrace because she couldn't bear children. Her husband, Zechariah, had a mystical experience at the temple and stops talking. And so here she is now, an older woman with a mute husband, and suddenly she's pregnant. And Mary is young and unwed. Not only that, but she's been visited by an angel who tells her that she is bearing a child who will be called the Son of the Most High. So Elizabeth is strangely, dangerously pregnant, and Mary is scandalously, dangerously pregnant. And we don't really know how those two women were feeling. Biblical accounts don't really spend much time on the emotions of pregnant women. By rights, both these women could have been feeling small and scared and isolated, shrinking from the expectations of motherhood, from the expectations of angels looming over them. And yet, in this short passage, they are incredibly powerful and joyful. We get a glimpse of a moment of joy between them. Mary sets out on her own to go visit her relative Elizabeth. And when Elizabeth heard Mary coming, perhaps she hadn't even seen her yet, she has a bodily experience of connection. She says, "As soon as I heard the sound of your greeting, the child in my womb, the life that I am growing, leaped for joy." This joy is more than merely feeling happy at seeing a relative. This joy is a spontaneous and deep reaction from the center of her being. This joy is a moment of recognition, of seeing and being seen. And this joy is born out of that place of creativity, that place of conception and growth, which is in all of us. Audre Lorde, who was a Black woman feminist and lesbian and cancer survivor and poet, called this kind of creative love a quote, self-connection shared. A self-connection shared. When I am in touch with my own deepest desires for life and I share that with another, that becomes a moment of joy. Audre Lorde goes on to say that the quote, self-connection shared is a measure of the joy which I know myself to be capable of feeling, a reminder of my capacity for feeling. And that deep and irreplaceable knowledge of my capacity for joy comes to demand from all of my life that it be lived within the knowledge that such satisfaction is possible. The joy between Mary and Elizabeth arises out of their creative solidarity with one another. They did not shrink and they did not stay alone. They are both working on risky projects, bringing children into the world who will become liberators. And they decide to stick with each other. Mary and Elizabeth sharing with one another, not just to bring forth new life for the children they are carrying, but new life for themselves. How can we do the same for each other? That kind of joy is not something to be possessed, something we can just have at the ready. It is born of sharing with one another. Joy is also, as most of us know, not something that lasts. It comes in fleeting moments of connection, and then it's over. But as Audre Lorde reminds us, we can call on it, we can open to it, we can live our lives even now in the knowledge that it is possible to feel joy. We can live our lives remembering those moments when we have shared our deepest desires with one another. Living our lives this way is not a sugary, sweet business. Opening ourselves to joy under the current day version of the Roman Empire is not easy. We are living in an empire of gross inequality, exclusion and domination of people of color, LGBTQ folks, migrants, an empire that locks people out of healthcare for their bodies and for their minds. An empire where the disenfranchised and the desperate feel like they have little choice but to pick up guns that are far too easy to obtain. And an empire that values profits over the well-being of our planet and the health of our children. It takes stamina and commitment and solidarity with one another to call on joy, to open ourselves to joy in the midst of all of this that numbs us to our deep feeling for one another. We Unitarian Universalists, those of us who celebrate Christmas, those of us who appreciate Christmas, we know that the birth of joy and hope doesn't happen just one time. It didn't happen just one time 2,000 years ago. It can and does happen every day, and we participate in the delivery every time we join together to bring new love and life into this world. We are witness to the birth of joy and hope. Every time the privileged and the marginalized stand in solidarity with one another and claim more life, even in the face of empire, we are witness to the birth of joy and hope. Just as Mary and Elizabeth claimed their own lives with joy, just as Crystal's friend that she mentioned is claiming new life with joy, let us do the same. In the year ahead, let us be the ones who greet one another with a leap of joy inside, knowing our deepest connections, believing in one another, knowing what beauty and love and justice we may together yet bring to life in this world. May it be so, and joy to you, joy to the world, even now. Amen.